Fate sometimes reduces the distance between life and death to the width of a spinning coin, heads or tails, train or airplane, survival or catastrophe, with nothing but chance separating a woman from the people who love her and the future she will never see. On January 16, 1942, Carole Lombard, the highest-paid actress in Hollywood, the undisputed queen of screwball comedy, and the wife of Clark Gable, boarded TWA Flight 3 in Las Vegas. She did so after winning a coin toss against her mother and her husband's press agent, both of whom had begged her to take the train back to Los Angeles instead. 13 minutes after takeoff, the Douglas DC-3 slammed into a near-vertical cliff face on Mount Potosi at roughly 185 miles per hour. All 22 people on board were killed instantly, including 15 young Army pilots en route to training bases in California. Lombard had been returning from the first major war bond drive of World War II. In a single day in her native Indiana, she helped raise more than $2 million, nearly $40 million in today's dollars. Thousands of Hoosiers stood in freezing lines for hours just to shake her hand and buy bonds from the actress who had become a living symbol of patriotic sacrifice. She laughed, posed, signed autographs, and told the crowd, "I'm not afraid of anything." Those would become some of the most haunting words associated with her legacy. Today we trace how a woman born into old money prosperity in Fort Wayne transformed herself into Hollywood's sharpest comedic force. At the height of the Great Depression, Lombard earned $465,000 a year, more than almost any actor in the industry, while publicly defending progressive taxation and higher rates on the wealthy. She rushed home from Indiana not only to return to her husband, but to confront rumors of his affair with Lana Turner, only to die in a navigational-era accident that, by modern standards, should never have happened. President Franklin D. Roosevelt would later call her the first woman to be killed in action in America's war against the Axis powers. She left behind a shattered Clark Gable, who wore one of her ruby earrings on a chain around his neck for the rest of his life and volunteered for combat missions over Nazi Germany. Some believe seeking redemption, others reunion. Carole Lombard was born Jane Alice Peters on October 6, 1908, into privilege that would fracture before adolescence. Her father built wealth in the hardware business. Her mother came from one of Fort Wayne's most prominent families. That stability collapsed in 1914 when her parents separated. Her mother moved west with 3 children and no husband, forging a new life in Los Angeles. What emerged was not a pampered starlet, but a fearless tomboy. Jane Alice outran, outjumped, and outclimbed neighborhood boys, developing the athleticism that would later define her physical comedy. That raw energy, combined with intelligence, timing, and nerve, would become the foundation of a career that reshaped Hollywood comedy forever. Her film career didn't start with some fancy studio plan or red carpet dream. It started by pure chance in the street, and that's wild already. At just 12 years old, Carole Lombard was playing baseball outside when director Alan Dwan spotted her and tossed her into A Perfect Crime in 1921. Sounds like destiny, right? Not even close. The road after that was rough, slow, and borderline ruthless. She bounced through bit parts, studio rejections, and short-term contracts that ended as fast as they started, leaving her stuck on the outside looking in. Then came the moment that nearly ended everything. Just before her 19th birthday, a car accident shattered a windshield and sent glass slicing across her face. In an industry obsessed with perfection, scars could end careers overnight. But Lombard didn't fold. She healed, adapted, and came back tougher, refusing to let Hollywood decide her limits. Instead of chasing glamour roles, she threw herself into the grind, spending 1927 to 1929 cranking out 18 short comedies at Mack Sennett's Keystone Studios. Those Sennett years changed everything. While other actresses saw slapstick as embarrassing, Lombard treated it like boot camp. She trained her body like an instrument, mastering timing, rhythm, and controlled chaos. She learned how to fall, flail, scream, and snap back with precision that made rehearsed gags feel raw and spontaneous. Later, she called those years the real turning point of her career, and she wasn't wrong. Directors noticed something different about her. She brought a fearless physical energy that couldn't be faked. She kicked, squirmed, twisted, and exploded with emotion in a way that felt real, not rehearsed. That skill detonated on screen when Howard Hawks cast her opposite John Barrymore in 20th Century in 1934. Hawks didn't want polish, he wanted truth. When the script called for Lombard to kick Barrymore, Hawks told her to stop acting and actually do it. She did exactly that. Legs flying, screams piercing, strikes landing hard. The scene became legendary because it wasn't safe. It was alive. Barrymore, a Shakespeare giant, got completely outpaced by Lombard's raw commitment. That moment locked in a new kind of comedy, fast, physical, and unapologetically bold. This was the birth of screwball comedy, and Lombard didn't just join it, she owned it. While others dipped in, she mastered it. In My Man Godfrey, 1936, she balanced chaos with heart, earning her only Academy Award nomination. By 1937, she broke free from studio control and became Hollywood's sharpest weapon, fast-talking, fast-thinking, and impossible to ignore. Her annual earnings soared to $465,000, a staggering figure during the Great Depression and roughly 5.5 times the annual salary of President Franklin D. Roosevelt himself. This didn't just make Carole Lombard the highest-paid woman in Hollywood. It placed her among the highest-paid individuals in the entire United States. Yet what set her apart wasn't just the money, it was how she spoke about it. At a time when wealthy figures quietly hid income or complained about taxation, Lombard did the opposite. She was blunt, transparent, and unapologetically progressive. "I get 13 cents on the dollar and I know it," she told reporters, "so I don't figure I've earned a dollar. I figure I've earned 13 cents and that's all right with me. Taxes build schools and maintain public utilities we all use, so why not?" Her candor stunned Hollywood and resonated nationally. President Roosevelt personally sent her a letter praising her as a model American taxpayer, an extraordinary gesture that would later take on profound meaning. Because when the country edged closer to war, Roosevelt needed voices Americans trusted. He needed someone who could sell sacrifice without sounding hollow. Publicly, Carole Lombard and Clark Gable were Hollywood's golden couple after their 1939 marriage. Privately, the foundation was cracking by early 1942. On January 12th, just 4 days before her death, the couple engaged in a brutal fight over Gable's infidelities. The tension centered on one name: Lana Turner. Gable was actively filming with Turner, who openly spoke of their chemistry. Lombard's fears weren't imagined. During the filming of Honky Tonk in 1941, Lombard had appeared on set so frequently that Turner reportedly retreated to her trailer to avoid confrontation. The next day, January 13th, Lombard left for Indiana to lead the nation's first war bond drive. Gable did not come to the train station to see her off. The absence was deliberate, and it cut deeply. In response, Lombard staged a final biting message. She left a naked mannequin in Gable's bed. It was performance art as heartbreak, a symbol of absence, humiliation, and betrayal. But beneath the anger lay deeper pain. Lombard, now 33, feared time was slipping away. She longed for a child but had been unable to conceive. At the same time, she grew increasingly frustrated with Gable's reluctance to engage meaningfully in the war effort. She was risking her image, her energy, and soon her life for the country, while the most bankable man in Hollywood remained safely sheltered at MGM. On January 15th in Indianapolis, Lombard's Bond rally shattered expectations. Thousands gathered to see her. She refused handlers, stood for hours, and personally handed receipts to buyers one by one. The totals didn't just exceed projections, they obliterated them. Rather than merely meeting the $500,000 goal, the rally shattered expectations, generating more than $2 million in war bond pledges in a single day. As the event closed that evening, Carol Lombard stood before the crowd and delivered words that would echo long after she was gone. "We all know what this war is going to cost," she said, "but the peace it will bring is priceless." The applause was thunderous. She had given everything she had. That same night, she sent Clark Gable a telegram that would later feel prophetic. "Pappy," she wrote, "you better get into this army." Then she began planning how quickly she could return home. Lombard didn't just want to celebrate her success. She wanted to confront Gable about the affair, about the distance between them, about the future of their marriage. And she wanted to do it while her moral authority was unshakable. The original plan had Lombard, her mother Elizabeth Peters, and Gable's press agent Otto Winkler returning to Los Angeles by train, a slow journey that would stretch on for days. Lombard rejected it immediately. Time mattered. Momentum mattered. She wanted to be back in Los Angeles as soon as possible. Her mother was firmly against flying. Elizabeth Peters, a devout Baha'i with a deep belief in numerology, felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The dates, the timing, the signs of that night unsettled her. Witnesses later recalled her pleading with her daughter, "Carol, don't take that plane." Otto Winkler agreed. He, too, was deeply uneasy. Gable's longtime press agent and best man at their wedding, Winkler believed he possessed an intuitive sense about death and had long feared dying suddenly in an accident. The debate grew tense. Neither Peters nor Winkler would budge. Lombard, frustrated but decisive, proposed a solution that felt perfectly in character, a coin toss. Chance would decide. It was theatrical, pragmatic, and reckless in equal measure. Lombard called heads, the coin landed heads. The argument was over. That evening, January 16, 1942, TWA Flight 3, a Douglas DC-3, departed Las Vegas at 7:07 p.m., bound for Burbank with 19 passengers and a crew of 3. Captain Wayne C. Williams was highly experienced, with more than 12,000 flight hours, including 3,500 on DC-3 aircraft. Yet a single navigational error sealed the flight's fate. The crew filed a magnetic heading of 218 degrees instead of the correct 210, placing the plane on a path toward rising terrain. In moonless darkness, with wartime blackout conditions extinguishing navigational beacons, the margin for error vanished. At approximately 7:20 p.m., just 13 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft disappeared into the mountains. The aircraft struck an almost vertical cliff face near the summit of Mount Potosi at roughly 8,000 feet, traveling at approximately 185 miles per hour with full fuel tanks after refueling in Las Vegas. The physics were unforgiving. A fully loaded DC-3, engine still turning at power, met solid rock head-on. There was no chance of survival. All 22 people aboard were killed instantly. Carol Lombard, her mother, Elizabeth Peters, Otto Winkler, and 15 young Army Air Corps pilots who never reached their training bases in California. The impact scattered wreckage across the mountainside, leaving nothing recognizable of the aircraft. Word of the crash reached Clark Gable while he was on the MGM lot in Burbank, filming Somewhere I'll Find You alongside Lana Turner. He left immediately, flying to Las Vegas and then traveling to Mount Potosi. Through the night, he waited with search parties, clinging to the impossible hope that somehow Carol had survived. By dawn, rescuers reached the wreckage. There was no ambiguity. Gable had spent the night drinking heavily. When the final confirmation came, he tried to climb the mountain himself, determined to reach where his wife lay. Studio handlers physically restrained him and led him back down. Witnesses later described him collapsing, gasping, and broken into the arms of those around him. Among the debris scattered across the slope, searchers found one of Lombard's ruby and diamond earrings. Clark Gable would wear it on a chain around his neck for the rest of his life. President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared Carol Lombard the first woman killed in action in defense of her country during the war against the Axis powers. The Treasury Department echoed the sentiment, she had died for America. 7 months later, on August 12, 1942, Clark Gable walked into a U.S. Army Air Force's recruitment office and enlisted voluntarily at age 41. Roosevelt personally urged him to stay home. Gable refused. Biographers noted he made little effort to hide the fact that he no longer cared whether he lived or died. He flew 5 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe as an aerial gunner on B-17 flying fortresses, Lombard's ruby earring pressed against his chest beneath his flight suit. On August 12, 1943, a 20mm German shell tore through his aircraft, passing so close it sheared off the heel of his shoe. Inches decided his fate. When Gable died in November 1960, his will contained one final instruction. He was to be buried beside Carole Lombard at Forest Lawn, not beside later wives, beside the woman lost to a coin toss, whose final telegram urged him into the Army and whose earring he carried into the skies, seeking redemption, reunion, or both.